Hey, welcome back everybody. Did you have a chance to grab a cookie? Anyone? I grabbed a cookie and I am on a sugar rush. Thanks, Pete, for the cookies. They're epic. I want to bring to the stage Morgan Reed. He is from ACT and today he's going to be discussing what Dodge really want.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, hello. I see the giant crowd that I've got here today. It's a little hard at 2:30. Hopefully you guys have some sugar. I'll try to put some energy into this so we keep it alive. Everybody in this room, you're going to probably know what all of my slides tell you, but I'm here to give you some talking points and some things that will help you internally when you're trying to talk about what your company needs to do to kind of win the contracts that everybody here is trying to win. How many in this room know who this woman is? Show of hands. One back there. No one else. Oh, two people. Two people in this entire room know who this is. This is probably one of the most important people in Gov and GOVAI, and possibly in the entire government right now for the projects that you want to do. This is Amy Gleason. Amy Gleason is the acting director of Doge. But if you think about Doge in the political headlines and Elon Musk, et cetera, this is the antithesis of this. Amy Gleason was actually part of the US government under USDS and was part of Obama, Biden, and now Trump. So she's gone Trump, Obama, Biden, Trump again. But she's interesting in that she is not a lifer in government. I first met Amy Gleason when she was running a startup that grew to about 300 employees, where she was incredibly frustrated by the failure of the healthcare system to deal with electronic health records. Her company, CareSync, was one of the first to start integrating and breaking down barriers for access to digital information. So part of the reason that you all have access to an electronic health record now is because of Amy and the work that she pioneered around the transformation of data into the hands of the people that really need it. So Amy comes to this job not as a political hack, but as literally somebody who's both built a business like you have, sold products to government, dealt with government contracting, and now when I sit down with Amy, she says, here's what I have been tasked with by this current administration and the changes that I need to implement. And the good news I have for you today is nothing fits more in what she is required to do than what Agentic and other AI products can do. However, here's the first thing that Amy and I sat down when we talked about this. She said, don't sell me AI. Full stop. She says right now, everybody is coming in to offer the government an AI solution at every department. Because remember, she sits atop Doge, but there's Doge peoples everywhere. And more importantly, each agency, even if there isn't anyone from Doge in the room, know what it is that Amy and the Doge team are looking for. And boy, the way I'm tired of even saying the word Doge. Let's just call it those who are the change agents inside of government. She says the first thing is to solve a problem. Do not sell me AI. And what does that look like? She is saying, lead us, get rid of the AI-powered buzzwords, focusing on the technical capabilities, demo features, without context. Generic AI can do anything pitch. Instead, figure out what the pain points are, show measurable outcomes, demonstrate cost-time savings, and prove ROI with real examples. This sounds like what you tell your sales team every day. But I'm here to empower you to go back home and say, if we actually want to close this deal, this is what the woman in charge of the whole shebang is saying out loud. And what does that look like? A problem-first approach. This is an example. Agency processes a number of forms. You can already dictate the number of time how much time it takes. Go through your solution. Show your result. But I think it's really interesting. There's a company here out in the audience right now, Voltron, that's already doing some of these same kinds of ideas, right? Helping people meet their government contract faster and easier. You all should be looking at what is the government tasked with doing right now and figuring out how you reach that reduction in processing time, that reduction in savings, and most importantly, I don't know if you've all noticed the news, but the large, big-name contractors are a little out of favor. They are looking for smaller and middle-sized solutions. And if you're here from the larger contractors, you should be partnering with the smaller ones because right now, they are interesting to the government. They want the cost savings. They don't want the staffing. And I think that's a big part of what you're really seeing. The second thing she said is, don't be annoying. Specifically, she told me, don't pester people to death. so that you are so annoying that they don't want to talk to you. And I hate to say it, this is something that's happening. We are so excited about AI that we want to talk to people like, buy my AI product, buy my AI product, buy my AI product. And Amy told me, guys, you got to stop. Watch out that you're overstepping the bounds because it's actually creating a backlash against you internally at the government. And more specifically, what she said is, look, got to deal with the pain points, especially with the government shutdown. She knows that when the government kicks back on, there is going to be a lurching feeling within the whole government to get mission-required efforts done quickly and efficiently. So what you're really going to need to do is, while the government is spinning its wheels and you've only got the essential personnel working, this is a good time to look for what are those mission-critical elements that you can go in and pitch so that they have something to process hopefully when the government comes back to life, when there is a CR, or when there is funding for the agencies that you all are trying to work with. And again, like she said on the Don't Annoy Us to Death, building relationships, not contacts is going to be critical. And the last point she said, do not overpromise because we talk. I have met with Amy with people from CMS. I have met with Amy with people from FDA. I've met with Amy from people from USDA. The DOGE part of it is in every agency, and they are doing meetings with every agency. And if she or others are hearing that your product is either over-delivering or over-promising and under-delivering, that gets around. So right now, there's so much hype around AI that some of your competitors, because no one in this room would ever do that, some of your competitors are overselling, and it's going to backfire. And right now, you need to be the one who says, here's what we're doing, here's my promise, here's what I've delivered, and here's the problem that I think I could solve for you. And I know this is a hard one, and I asked Amy about this idea of pilots. She said, prove your value. Start small, win big, was her point. And her specific thing was offer low-cost pilots on a specific challenge important to the agency to prove your value. This one's really hard for us in the AI space because, at least my experience with the government has been getting a clear statement of work out of the government is hard. And we all know feature creep and mission creep, and by the time you're actually producing a product, it looks like some kind of horrible Frankenstein with all sorts of bizarre and Byzantine additions and compliance problems that are built into it. Find a way, if that's happening to you, to push back in the context of what I already told you that the government is looking for. Focused efficiency, reducing overhead. And your product can meet that. Pilots are a way you can do that. If you've already got a good relationship with an agency, use your agency relationship, do it without a pilot. But if you've really got a product that can change and you're trying to do a clean and new pitch, go for the low-cost pilot on a specific challenge important to the agency. That means be aware of the news. Pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention to where the leadership of the agency is saying this is mission critical. Because that's the other thing that they're doing a lot of. They're attempting to cut various elements that have been part of these agencies for a long time. Now, politically, some of us may agree or disagree with what they're doing, but I think from a sales perspective, you need to understand that reality. Basically, 30 to 90 days, one specific use case, low risk of, make it so it's a low risk investment for the government. Metrics. Remember I told you at the beginning, Amy comes to this with an entrepreneur's and an innovator's perspective. She wants to know what she can measure. Her entire background was on measuring issues around your health record. How are we getting health into the hands of people? She tells a great story. Her daughter was a medically complex situation, which is what drove her to the situation. She said that she'd often have to walk into a doctor's office with file folders like this about her daughter's health care. She'd walk in and they'd say, well, we should get a scan. And she'd say, well, we just had a scan across the town 24 hours ago. Why can't you use that? Well, it's not interoperable. So CareSync was built out of her experience from that perspective. So when she talks about metrics and she talks about defining them up front and measure clearly, remember, you are coming to it from a person whose perspective was driven by the fact that they took a scan, but they can't read it. Show how you can connect the interagency elements, the interproduct elements, and move them past that, because that speaks to where she's coming from and her experience as an entrepreneur. And again, data that justifies full-scale deployment is going to be your ticket to long-term success within an agency. We all know this. I'm looking at my time. Make it bulletproof. Always, as I said, finding the problem that you solve, eliminating errors, cost reduce. Plan for scale from the beginning. That's hard, but better with AI than it's ever been in our lives. And this is the fourth point, and this is our critical one. Be open about trust, transparency, privacy, and pricing. No matter what you think about this administration, Amy and all of her people are still considering elements like privacy, like transparency, like trust, and of course, pricing. Privacy in particular, she has the experience of coming from the world of healthcare. She understands HIPAA. She definitely starts with, tell me more about how you are engaging with citizens' data and government data in a way that meets their expectations. So trust is non-negotiable from her perspective, transparency, privacy, and pricing. And here are the 4 pillars that we discussed. How you make decisions, be able to be transparent and quick about your training data and sources. And I think this first one around trust, model training, data sources, oversight mechanisms, etc. I don't want you to spend too much time of your pitch on that. You need to present it as though, here's how we handle it. There are vendors out there that can help with compliance. But you need to be able to handle that and get to what I said in slide 1, which is how are you delivering on the mission as quickly as possible. Don't forget trust, but make sure it's clear that you're competent and confident in the way that you can answer these questions, because you're going to be on the hook if you lie. Privacy, we talked about. Transparency, explainable AI outputs. There is still an enormous amount of skepticism within the government around the idea of, can you explain where you got this answer from? I know it is hard to explain the way in which AI works to a layperson, but do your best and explain how your product in particular works with the data the government has or the output that the government needs so that they can explain it and hopefully never have to appear in front of Congress to answer those questions. Pricing, everybody understands this one, but I think if I didn't put it in there, people would think I was remiss. And this is the big one. Government hates surprises. Total cost of ownership, not just licensing, including implementation, training, support costs. But I think for most of you in the AI space, this slide becomes not the slide that hurts you, but the slide that gets you the win. Because when you explain the transparency of costs and the cost savings that you all can create and make possible within a government agency, this, which has always been the scariest slide to the big government contractors here in DC, becomes the best slide you've ever had. And we're currently watching the big contractors here in DC remodel themselves, so this slide moves from danger to success. If you're a smaller company, beat them to the door. And if you're really good, maybe they'll acquire you. Then you can get by that yacht you've always had your eye on. So be upfront about multi-year commitments, show the scale cost, but understand this slide can be your win rather than your danger. So that's basically your framework for success. You're solving problems, not selling AI technology. You're building relationship, not bombardments. You're proving value through focused pilots, and you're being transparent in all 4 dimensions. And I think when you look at what you want to accomplish from your product and your success, this should be the easiest thing to meet. Now, we think of it this way. I know that all of you in this room are probably using ChatGPT or Perplexity or some other function to create your pitch. I would recommend all of you build these points or points like this into your statement before you run your prompt. I have found that it sounds small, but how you train it for the prompt exercise is a good idea. So when you're building your pitch, I would build your pitch with these as part of it. Make sure you're telling AI and your AI engine for your pitch document to say, make sure that I'm stating the problem first. Make sure that I have information to audit my outreach. Go through all of these points on your pitch. Because ultimately, as she says, the Doge principles that we've talked about through here are now table stakes to success. And so for you to do this pitch properly, you're going to have to include them in your mission. Common mistakes to avoid. You all know these, but I'll go over them again. Don't sell AI and claim it does more than it can. The people you're meeting with are 1, slightly skeptical, 2, kind of burned out, and 3, if you haven't noticed, currently out of work or at least not getting a paycheck. So be very careful about what you overclaim. Hiding limitations and known issues are going to be a critical feature. Make sure it meets the government's needs. Do not forget that they still have all of the legal oversights and the compliance needs that drive all of you crazy. And you know that everybody who works inside the government's biggest fear is their boss has to appear in front of some kind of committee to get yelled at by a bunch of octogenarians about how they didn't do it right. So remember on the hiding limitations or known issues, because that's going to get your client burned and it's going to get your product off the shelf. No pilot option, we talked about that, and be very careful about the pricing. Once again, Amy's focus was, look, tell me what you're going to do, give me a fair price, tell me how it lowers my costs, and I want to hear the answer to that. Look, the reality is you all know it, the opportunity to help reshape government in a more efficient, effective way, and dare I say it, actually improve the lives of government employees by giving them tools that allow them to do the interesting part of the job rather than the boring part of the job over and over and over again, is something that AI does better than anything we've seen possibly in our lifetime. It's moving people from a steno pool to something where they can activate their brain, where they can actually focus on the mission at hand rather than the pile of paperwork. You have to look at, I know that the politics of DOGE are hard, but the reality is the goal of increased government efficiency, while actually improving the lives of government workers, is a worthwhile outcome. And in the long term, no matter who's in the White House, I think that's going to be the move forward attitude, no matter what you see from both Congress, the administration, and ultimately the agencies that you all have to work with. And of course, as we said, you've got to play by those rules. Final thoughts. As I said, most of you could have written these slides for me. You knew all these answers. But I'm here today to tell you who is actually telling you and the rest of your team why these things are important. Most vendors will ignore this advice. We all have met the guys when you say, what is your product? Oh, we're selling AI to the government. And I hope you all look at them and go, nice, thanks, have a nice day. Get that solution, not the AI. Watch out for being bothersome. I thought it was kind of funny that Amy actually included that as one of her points, because I was expecting her, when we were going back and forth, to just give me these kind of by-the-book, rote answers of what the government wanted. She's like, oh, Morgan, you don't understand how annoying it's gotten. So she really said, this is something that I can add into this deck. As she said, too many big projects with no proof. I know that's been something that people have done in the past. It's not working. It's not going to pass the muster. And your advantage is actually listening to what the agencies are going for. And I have 5 minutes for questions. Do I have any? I can't, I've got a light right in my eye, so I can't see if anyone's got.
Hi, thanks for the talk. James Campbell here. I represent a few small startups, DoD right now, and so echoing all your thoughts are true. Definitely what you said is true. It's very tough to work in the government if you don't have a solution. Now, I've been working with the government for 25 years, and I'll say, a few questions back to you in terms of, I've seen the small business administration organizations help a lot, right? You didn't mention that at all.
SBA?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. SBA can help a lot. That is true.
And I would say it's worth registering on there as well and having conversations with them. They're very, very helpful. They even tell you which organizations need the most help, what they're looking for, things like that.
Absolutely.
And then the other piece on the CCIRs and the PIRs, and this is more specific on the DoD side, so forgive me, but we used to have the intelligence requirements just published publicly on the web. So it would tell us, hey, we need help doing XYZ. They're not there anymore.
No, they're not.
So does DOGE have an answer for that? And I know you can't speak.
I don't speak for them, but you'll notice earlier on in my slide deck, I specifically kind of talked about building the relationships, because you're right, those publicly available documents are harder to get. So about 6 or slides ago, I said, you're going to have to pay attention to the news and figure out where the mission is.
Yeah, and so
Again, he's right. SBA, great point. and the lack of the kind of large public divestiture of information to say what we're after. I don't know if you've noticed this, but it seems like it's a bit more government by fiat in terms of the way it moves. And so figuring out where that direction is something that's going to be harder. But ultimately, the people running some of those agencies still want a functional government that does the right thing.
Well, I guess my point is they should expect more slop coming in if they don't have targeted requirements, right? If that makes sense. So, you know. I do sound jaded at this point.
To the government's ears.
And I guess the last thing is, sorry, I just lost it.
Sorry.
In terms of SBIR, STTR process and things like that, I know you didn't really touch on that, but if you actually don't have a finished product, it's much better to just go that route because you could actually get your R&D funded. And again, finding the relationship is harder, but you mentioned get in before the primes. I would say the opposite. Go find the primes already on contract vehicles. They always have, set-asides for small business subs where build the relationship with the Northrops and things like that. And again, there is an acquisition path like you mentioned. But I found that to be the most successful in my career, just personally. So.
I think that both paths are very possible. I will say that there's been such a large amount of uncertainty for a lot of the large players that what used to be seen as a huge opportunity for those smalls, I'm finding that some of the larger contractors are like, well, I've got a lot of people who are not currently working, and so there's some of that going on. His point is valid. I think that it's a ship that it's a water you're going to have to navigate on your own, because I think the landscape around the really large government contractors here in Northern Virginia and DC is a little different than it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Just requirements and the talk a lot about problems. How are you seeing government buyers actually mature from requirements-based RFPs to I have a problem, help me solve this problem, rather than dictating to vendors, here's how I want you to solve a problem I don't even know how to define?
So that is, I should take that and put that into my slide, because that is
a great question.
Yeah, but that
Roll
is
the
the
camera
flip
back.
around that you've got to do. Because as you'll notice, as he said, we're not having the same kind of formal issuance of requirements and intelligence of what's going on. So a lot of it is identifying where the pain points are and then reaching out through either your existing contacts or cold calls or general processes. And you can reach out through Doge also to say, it's our understanding that this is something our product meets these 3 deliverables that the secretary said or the acting director said is a key element. Here's how we would solve the problem. So I would suggest you to, and this is where AI is nice because you can write it a lot faster than you used to, pitch the way you just said. We understand there isn't a formal requirement for this. There is not a statement of work. Here is how you can use our agentic product or our combination of existing data sets, or here's how we spandox the data in a way that meets the following compliance requirements to solve this publicly identified problem or this privately identified problem. And say, we'll help you build the statement of work on this, because that is what you're going to have to do. Now, there are formal processes coming online. They are doing a better job with that. But the government is staffed smaller than they've ever been in several years. And there's greater uncertainty as to both mission and focus than there has been in several years. So what he said, I would flip it on its head and say, that's how you pitch. That's part of how you pitch. Because if you wait for the formal process to come out, as you heard from the gentleman in the back, we don't have the actionable intelligence the way we did. We don't have the actionable statements. The Federal Register doesn't provide us the same information that it used to. So it's going to be a little bit more sleuthing and figuring out who you pitch, how you pitch. But I'd go back to my earlier slide about what do they want to see? What will help that person who is going to say yes to your contract, who may still have budget, what are they going to want to say? Because it's going to be the metrics they can deliver, the pain that they solve, and then how can they sell it internally? So great question, exactly right. Anything more?
Anyone else? Hand high.
Thank you. Alec McLean here. I really appreciate your point on pilots. I think some of what I've seen in the past, though, is, oh, we would love to do a pilot with you, but you don't have FedRAMP or other technical blockers. How would you navigate that now, or things like that now?
Do you have an internal champion within the agency that you're talking to?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
So I would say that becomes your winnowing stick on how to go process. If you've got an internal champion right now, the ones who are looking to solve a problem internally have a better path, and you can say, hey, how can I help you work with leadership to get this through? Right? I understand there's a technical blocker, but as I said, remember, the head of Doge's entire career as an entrepreneur was about seeing this block to innovation and building an entire business that she built around finding a way to solve that problem. So within the agency right now, within that overarching agency, which used to be called USDS, it's funny because Amy was actually part of USDS also for a brief time. Then she went out back in the private sector and has come back. She has that frame of reference. So internally, if you've got a rabbi in the house, if you've got a champion inside, start from that point. Hey, I understand this is a problem. Have you thought about talking to Doge about how we can work on this together? Who's the internal Doge person, right? Figure that out. Or if they're like, hey, I don't want to even get near that, I feel like that could cost me my job, then figure out how to help them pitch it internally to build an internal pitch document. If you don't have an internal rabbi and you're basically like out in the wilderness, it's really hard right now because there isn't as much actionable intelligence. There's not an RFI always that you can respond to. There's still a lot of government contracts being let or being publicly announced, but it's, as you know, that's a lot more of a feeding frenzy. And then you get into the problem of, am I selling AI or am I selling a solution? Because by the time it's publicly out there, it's a Christmas tree. And you're spending a lot of time kind of figuring out which ornaments matter and which ones don't. So I think focus your work on the places where you have internal champions or that you can grow internal champions by proving a product. To your point about how do you do pilots, and that's a big part of the issue.
Thank you, Morgan. I know question, but could you two maybe take it up outside? Yep. I'm sure Morgan would be more than happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much.